sure you've heard people speak about the difference between the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. And it's as if one is bad and the other is good, that the Ten Commandments are no longer relevant because we now have the New Testament and the teaching of Jesus. So one is old meaning therefore useless, done with, no longer needed, and the new, which is better, and it takes its place. And this is actually not the case as we're hearing in the gospel. Though even in Jesus' time, I suspect that the scribes and Pharisees may have been thinking that's where Jesus was going with his teaching. Eating food without washing hands, curing people on the Sabbath, these sort of things. What is he doing? Having women disciples. Surely something is going wrong here, and he's overturning the whole order of things. But Jesus, on the Sermon on the Mount, which we've heard today, is making it clear to them that he's not doing that he's not come to turn over the old order and wash away what was there beforehand. And so he's saying, don't imagine that I've come to abolish the law and the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to complete them. Some translations have fulfill, but complete is what he's doing. So the New Testament, the New Covenant teaching includes the Old Covenant teaching and completes them. So it includes and completes that teaching. It takes the Old Covenant teaching into a far deeper level and transcends it. And so we see that going deeper and transcending in his teaching here. So he's not come to do away with it. He's not come to do away with it, but he's come to transform it and bring it to its completion. And so we have Jesus challenging us about our virtue. And how deep does our virtue go? Is it as deep as the scribes and the Pharisees, which is only external? He wants our virtue to be far deeper, to be something that begins in here. And so he's using comparing and contrasting, as it were. You've heard how it was said to our ancestors, the Old Covenant, you must not kill. But I say to you, don't be angry with your brother. You've heard how it says, do not commit adultery. But I say, do not look at a woman lustfully. You've heard how it was said, and it goes on, and it goes on. Starting with the external, and Jesus taking it to the internal. And it's not really actually that surprising that the focus is on the external. And we can get caught up in the external as well. The scribes and the Pharisees, the people of Israel, had a reasonable excuse, I think, for perhaps focusing on the externals. Because we've got to think about, when was the law given to the people of Israel? When was it given to them? What were the circumstances of the gift of the law to them? They were fleeing from Egypt. The people that were fleeing from Egypt were a bunch of slaves. They were a mishmash of peoples, and there was no unity to them at all. And the Lord took them to the desert, and in the desert, he formed them to be a people. He was taking them to the promised land, so that they might be his people, his nation, there in the land of Canaan. And so he gave them the laws and commandments so that they might become this people. So that in Canaan, there would be this nation belonging to the Lord. So the law was to help them, was to form them to be a people, to be a nation. So it wasn't only to do with the religious stuff, but it governed their whole civic life. It separated them from the people, the sinful Gentiles, pagans around them, so that they could come closer to God by not being influenced by the pagan ways of life. And so it was something clear and obvious that this was a people who were different from everyone else, the externals of it. But God never intended the people of Israel to stay in Israel. He never intended them to be just a nation that would be in that area of Israel, Palestine. That was not his purpose. He intended, and he still intends, for his people to be a light for all nations and spread worldwide. And so the Ten Commandments and the law and the prophets is transformed in the same way, becomes something, it becomes more than it was beforehand. It's a bit like if you imagine a baby in the womb. Baby in the womb, it's like one thing, but it's something, but it looks a fair bit different once it's out of the womb and starts walking around and starts thinking for itself and starts doing things for itself. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm explaining things very well. But, it's still the same child, still the same person, but it's transformed and is in a sense different from what it was in the womb to what it is as an adult, a child, and then an adult. And this is what the Lord does with his people. They are growing. He is forming them, maturing them. And they're not just to stay at home where it's nice and safe. They're to leave home and go out. And so the law has to change as they move out, to prepare to move out. And so the externals aren't enough. It has to be something that comes from inside. And this is, you can see that in the prophets. The Lord already pointing to that through the prophet Jeremiah, Ezekiel, there are others, but just to give you a quick taster. So what have we got here? So this is Jeremiah. See, the days are coming when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel. I'm going to change, and this is what Jesus is bringing in. I need my glasses on. Deep within them, I will plant my law, writing it on their hearts. So the law was already previously written on 2 tablets of stone. It was external to them. And the Lord was saying, I will write that law not on 2 tablets of stone external to you, but I will write it on your hearts. So it's internal to you, so that it's something that is part of you. In Ezekiel 36, he says, I will pour clean water over you, and you shall be cleansed. I shall cleanse you of all your defilement and all your idols. I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I shall remove the heart of stone from your bodies and give you a heart of flesh instead. I shall put my spirit in you and make you keep my laws and observances and sincerely respect my laws and observances. Then you will be my people and I will be your God. I should have put my glasses on to read that. And so the Lord already had been letting his people know that it would be something no longer external but internal. The Lord doesn't desire us to be externally, outwardly holy, to look holy, because that's what the Pharisees do. And it's a trap we can get into. We can come into church and look holy and make the actions, and we can talk holy stuff when we're in front of other people, but then inside we can be something completely different. The Lord does not want us to be externally holy. He wants us to be completely holy, inside out. He wants you and I to be saints. The problem with the law is that the people of Israel could not keep it. We cannot keep it if it is something external to us. The only way we can keep it is if it is something that has been written in our hearts. And the only way that happens is through the Spirit. Ezekiel's saying, I will put my Spirit in you. My Spirit, myself. I will put my Spirit in you. Then you will want to keep my laws. Then you will desire to do that. Otherwise, it's me making the force of my will. I will and I will strive to do it by my own sheer force of personality or willpower. And that actually doesn't work. We need his Spirit in us. We need to have his love poured into our hearts so that we can love and pour that love out onto others. So that we can imitate Jesus. And so it's not an external holiness, it is actual holiness. It is not looking like we're free from sin, but actually being free from sin. And as we live this, as we pour that love out, it flows out of this church to the nations, to people out in Aberdeen, to people out in the UK, or wherever it is we go. We come here so that we can feed on love, so that love through the scripture can speak to our hearts, so that as we come up to the altar here, we can have love give himself to us as food so that we might chew on love, feed on love, and we become what we eat. So that this isn't an outward show, but this is a faith that is lived from here to there.